Estrogen dominance is a term that Dr. Lee coined, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have too much estrogen. It is more likely that you would have too little progesterone. Estrogen dominance is a term that Dr. Lee coined, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have too much estrogen. It is more likely that you would have too little progesterone. He used to say that estrogen dominance always meant a progesterone deficiency. When we use the term estrogen dominant, your estrogen could be high, could be medium, it could be low, but always progesterone is going to be in the basement. And so there's really an ideal ratio between estrogen and progesterone. And so you can have normal, even low levels of estrogen, but when your progesterone is low, that ratio is skewed. And so when we evaluate hormones, we look at the ratio of these hormones, and that becomes important. You know, estrogen is a proliferative hormone. It causes cells to grow and multiply and divide. And it does that in the absence of adequate progesterone. Progesterone is the hormone that keeps estrogen in check. I'm often asked, where do you get all this estrogen? How come we are becoming estrogen dominant? Where is all that estrogen coming from? Well, certainly our bodies are manufacturing estrogen. And it's interesting to note that in menopause, our bodies are still producing estrogen. And that's why it's important to not take estrogen until you know whether or not you need it. Our body makes estrogen, and this is the normal pathway for estrogen production in a menopausal woman from testosterone. We make our estrogen from testosterone. And what I'm seeing in women is elevated testosterone levels. So we have plenty of potential for making hormones even into menopause. But throughout our lives, we're actually overexposed to estrogen. We live in a sea of estrogen, Dr. Lee used to say, and that results from the foods that are out there. I'm very cautious about eating soy foods, for instance. Unfermented forms of soy are very estrogenic. And so our advice is always to be very cautious about eating soy because it can contribute to additional estrogen. We know that there are chemicals out there that also act as estrogens in our body, and our body seems to absorb estrogenics very readily. And so I think that it would be important for us to note that our diet, our environment, as well as our own bodies are the key reasons why we can become estrogen dominant and not even have control over that, maybe not even realize that you're estrogen dominant, simply because of our exposure to estrogen. Problems will result when estrogen is too high and progesterone is way too low. Problems that are related to the cell proliferative part or the cell growing part of estrogen. So some of the symptoms that result from estrogen dominance are problematic. Headaches, for instance, fatigue, short-term memory loss. That may be problematic for the people that are around you. Sleep disturbance. You know, if you're not able to sleep really well, it could be due to estrogen dominance. Retaining fluid, water retention, is one of the symptoms of estrogen dominance. Certainly the things like hot flashes, vaginal dryness, irregular periods, those will all be connected as well. Then it goes from mild to relatively severe. Although women think hot flashes are severe, nothing is as severe as developing a cancer from estrogen as a result of estrogen dominance. Some of the more concerning things that evolve from estrogen dominance would be low thyroid symptoms. We will do one on thyroid eventually, a video on thyroid, because I really have the perspective that women are burning out their thyroids. And if you're estrogen dominant, that's going to happen even faster. We know that weight gain has become a huge issue. Obesity is just skyrocketing. And I wonder if, well, I know that estrogen dominance is at the crux of that as well. Women that are developing cysts on their ovaries, it's very serious things are happening. Ovarian cysts can result in infertility for younger women and in cancer for older women. We know that hormone challenges develop as a result of being estrogen dominant. And it is very important to resolve estrogen dominance. The resolution of estrogen dominance happens when you take 3 steps. Number 1, you do a saliva test. Doing a saliva test to evaluate whether or not you're estrogen dominant is very important. And women can be estrogen dominant almost at any age. So you can have teenagers that are estrogen dominant, and they're going to have PMS and mood swings and all of the problems that teenagers seem to exhibit in their early years, time before 20 for sure. And then when we reach menopause, we start to see some of the same things, the irritability, the mood swings, the depression, and some of those things seem to come back again. Well, they are related to hormones that are fluctuating all the time. We need to recognize that protection from progesterone is very important. And so Dr. Lee always advised that we would test our estrogen and progesterone together to be able to determine what is the ratio. And when I do saliva test reviews with practitioners and with women, we always look, what is the ratio between these two? We know that hormones do fluctuate, and that's one of the questions that people will sometimes ask about saliva testing. Well, if your hormones fluctuate, shouldn't you be testing oftener? You don't have to, because we know the pattern of the menstrual cycle. We know the pattern that hormones take. That's been studied for years and years and years. So we understand what our hormones should be doing. And to evaluate with a saliva test, if you are estrogen dominant, it will reveal that. Number 2, you start to become informed yourself. Look up the links that we've put on this website and keep looking up information that as it relates to you. And number 3, move forward in a program to restore hormonal balance. It's not enough to test, and it's not enough to keep reading. You have to do something with that information. Moving forward with doing something about it, taking an active part in your own hormone health resolution, very important. And we'll be there to help you every step of the way.